Welcome to another episode of my Ford Falcon XR8 project, proudly supported by Ryobi. In this episode, we're getting more power, we're getting a new exhaust system, we're doing a full suspension upgrade to get the car ready for some skids and to dominate Marty's Camry. Welcome to another episode of Mighty Car Mods. Last episode, my wheel fell off. Turns out this is a common issue with BA Falcons that are not serviced regularly. Ball joint failure, and I suffered that one. Now this episode is going to be absolutely massive because we are unlocking the power that is hidden within the Boss 260 motor. And I thought I'd quickly show you some of the Ryobi tools that we're going to be using, because these here are probably the most common tools that we use in Mighty Car Mods and here in Super Garage. And you will see these tools being used today as we transform this car. Now the first one is this one. We call it a bendy light, and you would have seen these on the channel before, but they call it a shop light. We use these under the bonnet when we're working on cars because it's got a clip up here and also a clip down there. You can hang it, turn it on, and then see exactly what you're working on, which is awesome. They also make a little inspection light, and throughout this video you'll see this used on hoist arms, inside wheel wells, again on the bonnet so we can see what's going on, articulating head, and these ones here are 4-volt lithium that can be charged via USB-C, which is super handy. Over here we've got our ratcheting wrenches. As you probably know, probably my favorite tools here, and they're used all the time. We got 3 of them. These big ones here have articulating heads, and you'll see that put to good use also today in the engine bay. And the little one, this here also is running off 4-volt lithium and chargeable by USB-C. Obviously not as much torque as the big guys, but really handy and light and small. Now when it comes to our DACs, these are the big impact wrenches. This is the Ryobi 1 HP. This here, it's got multiple power levels that you can choose down here. This one being used for brakes, for suspension, for really big stuff. And again, I like to have a lighter one because it's just easier to articulate and move around under the car when you don't need as much power. As you can see, this one here does get a lot of use. And lastly, the basic Ryobi 1 HP drill, which we will be using with a Christmas tree bit when we make our exhaust later in the video. So those are the tools that you're going to be seeing today. And the first thing we need to find out though is just how much power does this nugget actually make? We are doing cams, we're doing exhaust, we're doing tune, we're doing our ECU. There's so much stuff going down, so we want to hit a baseline. So the first thing we're going to do is head down to Castle Hill Performance, throw it on a dyno and run up some numbers.
Our first job of the day is to get a baseline power run. This means we'll have an idea as to how much the car makes in its current form so that we can get an accurate measure of how much power we've made after we've done all of our modifications. We've made 196 kilowatts at the wheels, and with our baseline power figure now locked down, we can get into the good stuff, the modifications. I'm working with my mate Anthony again, who works down at Castle Hill Performance, and we're about to rip this thing apart.
So we've ended up with 196 kilowatts at the wheels on the dyno, but as heat soaked in as it does, the car made less and less power. Now the most standard modifications people usually do with these is an intake, an exhaust and a tune. Then if you want some more power, we're talking about cams. Now with an LS engine, there's only 1 cam. With this, there are 4, and that is why a lot of people don't go to the trouble of changing them, because it's a big job.
So we've got a set of the biggest drop-in cams from Crow. Saves you doing valve springs and everything like that. These just go in and they will work. Match to that, we've got to take off the timing chain kit. So we've got a Ford Performance timing chain kit with all new tensioners and guides. And obviously, we've got to pull the oil pump off. So we've got a Mellings upgraded oil pump, and that's pretty much everything you need to get a set of cams in the Boss motor.
Yeah, now it's a big job, isn't it?
It is. You will get a bit of a note. It is going to sound absolutely fantastic, especially matched with the new exhaust that we're doing for this car as well.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, I just need to make sure it beats a V6 Camry, because at the moment it's touch and go.
Oh, V6 Camrys are pretty powerful.
That's what Marty keeps telling me. Have you been drinking the same Toyota
No,
Kool-Aid?
it's just facts. They're a fast thing. So
what is going on? I feel like I'm in Severance, and you're like down in the world where Camrys are awesome, and I'm up here in the real world. Like, what's with Camrys, man?
They're just a great thing. The question is, do you have a tissue box on the back parcel shelf?
We do. We did that before.
That's an extra 10 kilowatts right there.
Oh, God. All right, man. Well, it's time. Let's kick in.
Yeah, let's get into it.
One of the most challenging jobs on the Ford XR8 is removing the factory exhaust headers. They're extremely difficult to get access to and require some custom tooling to make the job a bit easier. Luckily, our mate Chris has done this many times before and was happy to step in and help us out. It's also worth flagging right now that making power with naturally aspirated cars doesn't often unlock the incredible space wizard potential of turbocharging or even supercharging. But in the spirit of keeping the purity of Ford's V8 Boss 260 engine alive, I'm interested to see how much power we'll get from all of these mods. In fact, what do you think it's going to make? Have you done these mods before? I'm keen to hear about it. The tricky thing here is that Ford also released the XR6 Turbo with the mighty Barra engine, and not only do people absolutely love them, they're also capable of making ridiculous power, which is going to be hard for the humble V8 to keep up with. And without a serious amount of modifications, I don't know if we're going to have a chance keeping up with the turbos. But also, my goal here is not to create a dyno queen. My goal, of course, is to make a drift car. And as demonstrated in the last episode against the Camry, in stock form this car was already capable of ripping a decent burnout and some excellent power slides. Until my wheel fell off, but we don't talk about that anymore. Well, actually, we do talk about that later in this episode once we get into the suspension work.
This is my favourite tool, this thing, by the way. I call it a side DAC. I think it's called something else. Have you liked using it?
Yeah, it's actually been really good. I rate it highly.
This
It's great.
This is why the articulating head is such a good feature, because while that is in that position, it's very hard for me to get that on there. I can go 180 with that and put that on there, and then done. So easy.
A lot of work went into updating this model that was replacing the AU Falcon. And of course, there was competition coming in hot from its biggest rival, the VY Holden Commodore, also released in 2002. Ford spent $500 million developing this car and tens of thousands of hours durability testing it, with some suspension tuning taking place on the Nürburgring in Germany. And while this engine is called the 260, word on the street is that when it was new, it was actually pushing out a bit more than that. The biggest problem with this car, as I mentioned earlier, was the competition within, the XR6 Turbo. But we don't like turbos anymore because it's all about purity.
All right, so I'm not actually whizzing these off yet. I'm just using this to crack them. They're not that tight. But I've just found that this one here is not even tight. Like, that doesn't need any tool at all to undo that. And we found the exact same thing on the other side. Does it feel like it's stripped or anything?
No, I've just put a bolt in. I'm just tightening it now. It has bottomed out in the thread and it's going tight. So I think they've just come loose over time by themselves, which is still not ideal.
So I'm just using the little 4-volt lithium for this. Now, while the big side DAC has heaps of torque, this one here has less, but it's physically a lot smaller, which just means it's a bit easier getting into these tight spaces with bolts that don't have to be that tight anyway. All 4 cams are out of the engine, and I can tell you it is a big job. Now, we've thrown them in the bin, but we've kept one so we can show you the difference between this one and this one. Why does that make more power?
As you can see straight away, the cam is wider on the lobe itself, and it will allow it to open longer.
So basically, instead of looking like this, it's actually like that. So as it spins, it's holding the valves open for longer, which means more air comes in, which means we can get more fuel in with our Haltech, which means more bang, which means more skids.
Correct, 100%.
So some of the benefits of this are obviously we're going to be able to get more power, but we're also going to have a higher RPM, and also it's just going to have a bit more of a lumpy, chunky sound, which is exactly what you want from your Ford V8, which is why they are better than LS1s, agreed?
Trying to convince the guy that works on Holden engines all day that Ford engines are better is not usually an argument that goes very far. Except that while he works on LSs all the time, he actually owns a Falcon, so I really don't know what to make of that. As I'm installing the first aftermarket cam, I can almost smell the power, and I'm enjoying working on a car that I have no real experience with. My family, of course, was a Holden family. My first car after my classic Mini was a Holden Chimera, what an upgrade, and my mum drove a VL Commodore. Honestly, the only time I went in a Ford Falcon was when I needed a taxi, because these cars were rolling cesspits of vomit and human slime, and you paid by the minute for the privilege of experiencing how revolting they really were. But not mine, not this one. This car is an Australian icon, and I'm on a mission to change my mind about them, and hopefully change yours too, and in the process, chopped the absolute shizuoka out of Marty's foul Toyota Camry, which, let's be honest, will not be hard. So all 4 cams are now in the car and the new timing kit, and it's all been put back together with a Fenix radiator to keep everything nice and cool. That has been an absolutely massive job, and now we can move on to the exhaust. Now, X-Force have sent us over a set of headers. Taking the factory headers off this engine is very, very difficult, and as such requires some custom tooling like this modified Allen key, or my favorite, this one. And you would never know that you need a custom tool like that unless you've done this job too many times. And luckily the boys here, even though they love their LSs, they have worked on these enough to know that you're going to need a little bit of wacky stuff like that. So we've got the X-Force headers, and then Chris from Castle Hill Performance is going to make a custom system all the way back. We get a nice little twin tip on the back of it, and then we're going to be sounding burbly and chunky. So let's move on to the exhaust system. Aftermarket performance headers paired with a couple of 2.5-inch high-flow cats should unlock some good horsepower and torque gains, and will help this engine sound its burbly best. The exhaust system can often be one of the biggest performance limiting components of an engine system and can deliver huge power gains when upgraded, particularly on turbocharged cars where bigger dump pipes can be paired with a factory system. Except we don't talk about turbos anymore because they're cheating, and you all know it's true. From the cat's back, this is a full custom system, giving this Ford the love it deserves. The next step here is measuring up and cutting the pipe and then tacking it into place on the car. Once everything's aligned perfectly and checked for clearance, the whole thing can be removed, welded up properly, painted, and then reinstalled on the Falcon. The exhaust is on, and check it out. This is freaking awesome. I'm very excited about this. So we've got our X-Force headers here, and they're going down into a couple of high-flow cats, 100 cell, and from there we're going into the custom system that Chris has made. This is a dual 2.5-inch that's coming down here into a single 3.5-inch. Now, you might have big diameter pipes like that if you've got high power Evos and stuff like that, but most of the time with your lower power Japanese stuff, you've got a 3-inch exhaust. Point is, this is bigger. Why? Because V8. Down here, we've got a small resonator going up over here, down here into a small muffler. And then the last thing to put on that is our tips. There's a couple of different options. I was going to do a couple of big Bozo pipes, but instead decided to go for something nice and classy like that. It's going to look amazing, it's going to sound amazing, and you know what? They are very, very clever down here at Castle Hill Performance, and a massive thank you to the boys, because this is a thing of art. It is absolutely beautiful, and the artist himself is just sitting here like this is normal. He's just sitting here like this is every day, because it is every day, but it's absolutely beautiful. Thank you, mate. Love your work. One of my favourite things about working on cars is spending time with people who are masters of their craft and getting a small glimpse into their brilliance. Chris is giving me some guidance on welding up my exhaust as I spray it with liquid metal. And as much as I enjoy having a crack in the true spirit of DIY, it's probably about time that I let the man do his job and finish welding up this exhaust that he's so carefully created. So I pass the torch back to its rightful owner so we can get this thing done and back on the car. The exhaust is on, the cams are in. Massive thank you to the guys out at Castle Hill Performance. But what does it sound like? Well, I'm going to give you a quick little taste. If your ears had a tongue, they get one lick only, because it doesn't have an ECU yet, so it's a little bit lumpy, but check this out. Prepare yourselves. Are you ready? It's going to be great. So now we've got our car sounding good. It's got some performance, well, once we get it tuned, but now we've got to turn it into a drift car. So over here, we have a bit of a recipe of how to get started. So we've pretty much got everything that Whiteline makes for this car: arms, bushes, sway bars. Then over here, we've got steering knuckles that have been modified. That's the factory hole. Now there's a new hole, because that's going to give us more steering lock. And then what I'm most excited about over here is a set of custom-made Shockworks Coilovers set up specifically for drift. Now, these were made by Chris, and not only did he get these made for our car very, very quickly, he's also come up from Melbourne
so he can help me install them. Hey Chris, thank you so much for coming
Thanks for
down.
having me again.
First impressions, $12,000 Ford Falcon, what do you reckon?
It's a phantom purple Falcon with a bonnet bulge. My old man worked for FPV. He pretty much tuned the very first BA, which was an AU dressed up, all the way down to being the last of the 12 employees at FPV before they closed.
And you're a drifter as well, right?
Recreationally, absolutely. I very much love drift and it's been part of my identity since an early teen.
In general terms, when you're making some shocks, what is the difference between how you would build something for a drift car versus how you would build shocks for a street car?
Having a car that's very stable at high speed will really help,
Yeah.
with a little bit more of a trade-off for ride quality than what we'd have if you just wanted a street kit.
Because, I mean, you want stability and predictability, particularly in transitions, right? So it's one thing to be sliding this way, but when you're catching and sliding that way as well, you want to have some confidence with how it's going to do that.
Having that big over rotation, and then if you make the front stiff in the spring, you have a car that, rather than the front nosing, it then pushes weight onto the rear, and it just makes the car generally a lot more enjoyable. You'll notice the caster feel and the weight build up on the front tyres more.
Yep.
It's generally just a much more pleasant experience.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I can't wait to get those in there. But before we do that, most of the factory stuff in there at the moment is trash. It's completely thrashed. You probably saw like that the ball joint just popped out. Did something break?
What happened, Drifter? What happened?
Yeah, for sure. Falcons have a tendency for ball joint failure. With the right maintenance, they're completely fine. It's not a design error or anything like that. I think just the factory arms had issues.
So let's get all that stuff, throw it in the bin, then we'll replace it with all of that, and then pretty much the last thing we do is put the shocks in, right?
Yeah, for sure. Everything, all the arms go in. We sort of, and then from there, set all the heights, make it pretty.
Awesome. Thanks for coming up all the way from Melbourne.
Thank you.
Let's get to it.
Cheers.
This is my hustle, power and muscle, no fear in my eyes. From ashes we rise, opposition don't faze me. Look how they made me, they look at me crazy, but I'm built for this crazy. Countdown, then we blast off. Let them see me with the mask off. Tell them I'm here when they ask y'all. You know it's all gas when I pass y'all. Applying that pressure, we gon' raise the stakes. The only way to separate the real from the fake. We always show up, boy, nobody's safe. Beating on my chest, I was raised by the apes. Catching every breath with each step. One wrong move and this could go left. Gathering every ounce of my strength. Keep on moving, let's go to full length. Don't ever doubt me, it's unlikely that I go out without fighting. It's all in writing, I'm destined to be, and I will never let any of y'all take it from me. So close I can feel it in the air. So tired but we almost there. Hold on longer, grip on tighter. Buckle down, we gon' take this higher. Battle scars from battles won. Battle tested but we ain't done. Deep breaths, I can see it from a distance. Lit a moment, victory through resistance. This is my hustle, power and muscle, no fear in my eyes. From ashes we rise, opposition don't faze me. Look how they made me, they look at me crazy, but I'm built for this crazy. Yeah, third world struggle breeds character. Programmed to break barriers, focus and block out the noise. All of these hurdles are fuel for the ploys. They don't care about what you did, they only care about what you're doing. So we don't ever get complacent, but we don't worry about who we facing. Get out the way, get ran over, we fight through the pain. Till it's all over, we ain't cut the same. Don't stop for the rain, let it be freezing, the pouring insane. I work too hard, I pay my dues to get this far. I ain't come to lose, beaten and bruised, blood on my shoes. Circle of winners, which side will you choose? Underestimate me, that will never break me. That will only take me where I need to be. It's a hard climb, and I've been waiting. No more complaining, no time remaining. Keep pushing hard, victory lap. Only go forward, there's no looking back. It's a killer instinct, it's time to attack. You better strap up and brace for impact. We back, this is my hustle, power and muscle, no fear in my eyes. From ashes we rise, opposition don't face me. Look how they made me, they look at me crazy. Never get rattled, I'm built for this place, suited for battle.
We have pulled absolutely everything out of the front of this car and thrown it in the bin because it is completely flogged. Now on the other side, of course, we had a wheel fall off, so we want to change this side as well. And we're going from this to this. How's your experience been so far working on this Ford Falcon?
It's all pretty straightforward. None of the bolts are rusted. It's but literally everything needs replacing. Yeah,
Yes.
It's definitely done just the right amount of Ks. Yeah.
It's becoming evident that I bought this car just as things were starting to break, but not with so many kilometres that these same components have had to be replaced. In this way, around 170,000 kilometres on this kind of car is a bit of a danger zone, because a lot of the parts are on the verge of literally falling apart due to neglect, and previous owners haven't put in the time or investment to make sure that it was serviced properly. But if it had done a lot more kilometres, at least I'd hope that somewhere along the line, a mechanic during a routine service would have picked up just how flogged everything was, and then these components probably would have had to be replaced by the owner.
So I've got a couple of Ford uprights here from a Falcon, and these ones have been modified for us for drifting. You can see there's a hole here that is normally connected to the steering rack, but now the hole has been moved to here. Why is it that makes this car better for drifting and more responsive?
Sure. So essentially, we've changed the pickup point from the outer to the inner. The distance between these points changes how quickly the steering turns, and then also how far the steering can go.
And so I guess the thing is as well, sometimes when you're kind of counter steering and you're trying to catch a drift, you're getting to the end of what you have available for your steering, whereas now as you come back the other way, ours will go to 11. So you can catch a more aggressive drift in a way.
Sure, so yeah, normally with a normal car you might be able to get 30 degrees, 40 degrees of drift before the car slides. With this you might see 50, 60 degrees. It may even be you can do the backwards entry if you're good enough at driving the car.
Yeah.
Our modified Ford uprights are being installed onto our Whiteline upper and lower control arms, which come fitted with polyurethane bushes and new ball joints, which is exactly what failed when I was battling Marty's Camry. We're also installing brand new OEM tie rod ends because the old ones seemed a bit flogged, and while we're under here, it's an easy thing to change. Obviously the whole car will need a proper alignment when we've finished, which will set it up for its intended purpose, which in my case is skids and dominating Camrys. I'm also installing new wheel bearings and hubs because the old ones had to be thrown in the bin. The brakes and rotors will be upgraded, but for now we need to reinstall them so that the car can be moved and driven. There's some exciting braking mods coming up next episode. And now it's time for the main event. Chris's custom-made Shockworks Coilovers, which have been specifically built and tuned personally for my Ford Falcon, and my intended use, which will be drifting. These will get set up outside of the car first for height, and then we can fine-tune the height and dampening during the alignment, along with the camber and caster adjustment due to all of the other components that we've installed. The last thing to go on the front is a Whiteline adjustable sway bar and adjustable end links. This will help reduce body roll and increase grip, and with that, our first stage of mods is done, and the Ryobi tools have performed like absolute legends as they always do.
Okay people, it has been a big day, but the fronts are now done. We got new upper control arm, lower control arm, tie rod ends, hub, modified knuckle. We've got our Whiteline sway bar, and now of course, our fully adjustable custom built Shockworks coilover. So now that all that is done, we can move on to the rear, but that in itself is a big job because that means dropping the rear subframe. It appears that it is just as flogged as the front of it, plus there is a new smell. During this process, we had to put some fuel in the car, and once you go over a certain level, fuel starts spilling out everywhere. Now, I'm not saying that it was deliberately sold to us with only a small amount of fuel in it, but it appears that when it crosses a certain level, it leaks a lot, and that was going to be a subframe out anyway. So that is something that we're going to need to investigate next episode. Next time we're going to be finishing off the rear. We're taking the diff out because we're going to be welding it. We've got some handbrake stuff happening. Our Haltech's going in. We'll be going back down to the dyno, of course, and doing all the drifty mods that we need to do on the back to make this car slide properly. So I'm very, very excited to see how it goes. A massive thank you, of course, to Ryobi Australia for supporting this particular project. I'm really, really excited to get it out on the track, do some skids, and see what it is capable of. So we'll see you next time for another episode of Mighty Ford Mods.